Hello there, welcome back to the channel. Now we're going to be discussing something in today's video which is not specifically a lore topic, which is a little off kilter for me I suppose, but hey ho, we're here, and that would be the Section 31 long trek that is set to release late January 2025. The trailer for this, as of the making of this video, dropped relatively recently, within like the last week. And since its release, I've seen a lot of people on both sides of the Trek spectrum. They either love it or they hate it. And I'm not here to debate whether or not the Section 31 long trek is going to be good, or whether you should like it, because that's up to you. What you consider a good, digestible piece of entertainment and escapism within either a specific franchise or broadly across multiple is entirely your decision. You are allowed to like whatever the hell you like. So, you do you, that's fine. If you don't like it, that's fine. If you love it, that is fine. We're here to discuss what exactly the impact of Section 31 is on the lore. So this is why lore adjacent. So, before we get started on that, please like, share, and subscribe. And, of course, tell me your thoughts on Section 31, because it is a controversial topic within Trek, which is not something that I particularly realized, which we will discuss. Now, for context, where did Section 31 exactly come from? So, the first time we encounter Section 31, it is in my actual favorite Star Trek series, which is Deep Space Nine. A slightly darker take in and of itself on Star Trek, so it was no surprise that an organization as clandestine and dark operating as Section 31 would emerge in a show like Deep Space Nine. DS9 is known for its hot take, controversial, dark topics, which is not entirely juxtaposed to what Next Generation, Voyager, the original series and other things would touch on. Of course, they all touched on quite dark and controversial subjects, but Section 31 effectively is a Black Ops division within the Federation. It has its origins on Earth specifically. It's a descendant of organizations like the CIA, MI6, KGB, etc., going back further. It's merely an expression of the same philosophy. Now, it's in the original Starfleet Charter as stated, and as can easily be looked up. Now, Starfleet eventually becomes a Federation organization, as then does Section 31. By the 24th century, it's a relatively unknown. Starfleet Command knows it exists, but they use it as plausible deniability. Now, it should be stated that even in the Kelvin timeline, we see Section 31. We also know that because effectively, although Section 31 is an organization, it derives its name from basically a line of script in the Starfleet Charter that says under extreme measures, under extreme circumstances, extreme measures can be taken. So basically, if it's the survival of the entire Federation is at stake, and we've got to blow up Cardassia and kill 10 billion people, or whatever the population of Cardassia is, then that we can do that if it means saving 10 trillion. No one likes the choice. We hope we never have to make that choice, but we can do that. And that's what effectively the clause is. The organization, Section 31, is separate to the clause. It is an actual organization. Whereas, for example, in the Kelvin timeline, Admiral Marcus likely was working with Section 31 if he wasn't fully Section 31. But he could have easily justified all of his actions simply by this Section 31 business in the Starfleet Charter says I can take extreme actions during extreme circumstances. Just saying. So not everything harsh and extreme that happens in the Federation will be Section 31. We do know, again, that the organization dates back to at least the early 22nd century when Starfleet was founded. Long before the launch of the NX-01, it was already an organization, with Lieutenant Malcolm Reed, actually in his younger years before being a crew member aboard the Enterprise, actually was a member. And actually continued to be a member of the organization as far as they were concerned in the ensuing years. But again, what exactly does the impact, what does this actually say about the Federation? The very presence of an organization, as Odo would say, made sense to him. The Cardassians have the Obsidian Order, the Romulans have the Tal Shiar, the Klingons have some watered down crappy version as well. Everyone, every great power has something like Section 31. It's just Starfleet and the Federation have got better at hiding it because, keep their hands clean. Plausible deniability in Section 31 are there to make sure that men like Dr. Julian Bashir can live in paradise in ignorance as to the real threats and dangers out there. They exist to eliminate those problems before they become problems. And if that means killing someone, if that means eliminating a political movement, whatever, they will do so. Blow up a ship, fine. Now, destroy an ecosystem, fine. Kill one person, fine. Kill a million, fine. Kill a billion, fine. Section 31 basically doesn't say no. There's nothing that they consider to be effectively too extreme as far as we can tell. We do know that by the 25th century they seem to be becoming a little bit more mainstream again, with actual facilities more commonly known about at the Daystrom space station. So yeah, they're integral. They haven't gone away. But again, what exactly do they mean to the greater lore of Star Trek? And it's a controversial subject, because a lot of people felt that they destroyed the utopian idea that Gene Roddenberry wanted to create. A lot of people, in fact, in general, looked down on Deep Space Nine, because it's quite well documented that the writers waited until Gene was dead before they made Deep Space Nine. And a lot of people don't think he would have approved of the show because of its darker themes and context. It was all about war and violence. But those things need to be addressed as well. And there's one thing Star Trek has never been afraid of. It is tackling a dark subject matter like war, the effects of war, and that as a medium through Deep Space Nine was something we could really see. The trauma that Nog went through in losing his leg, the PTSD that Sisko clearly had, and so on and so forth. The moral quandary of being born of a state that is violent and tyrannical and extremist, but you yourself are ideologically opposed to them and forcing you into a position of fighting against your own people, Odo. Deep Space Nine did these things very well. It showed the dark and the light. Kira was the first officer of a space station, but in Deep Space Nine, in Next Generation of Voyager, she probably would have been considered a terrorist. So, shades of grey. Section 31 was merely an extrapolation of that logic. It showed us that humanity, despite wanting to believe it's all evolved, we see the best and the brightest aboard the Enterprise, aboard Voyager. That's the best face, the image the Federation wants to portray, but in reality there is always a darker side. Section 31 will always exist whether we like it or not. It's now part of canon. So we have to embrace it and figure out where exactly it does fit into lore. Now personally, my personal opinion, nothing more, I'm actually looking forward to the Michelle Yeoh led Section 31 Long Trek. I really like the idea of Section 31. It made a lot of sense to me because I always felt Starfleet was a bit too much of a wet lettuce when it came to dealing with its adversaries. You can't fight a race like the Romulans, the Klingons, the Borg with, good intentions and a bottle of Chateau Picard. So you gotta actually get down and dirty sometimes. And Section 31 of the Federation's excuse to do that. So, in the lore, they may break what Gene Roddenberry set out to create, this perfect, harmonized humanity. But we do often see, time and time again, that despite all of this, the Federation is not so harmonious. Their intolerance of genetically engineered people, the wars they're constantly getting involved in, their insidious nature from the perspective of a race like the Ferengi or the Cardassians, because the root beer of the Federation, it's bubbly and fun, and it's disgusting. But the more you drink it, the more you start to like it. Effectively, you drink the Kool-Aid. The Federation was all about indoctrination, whether you like it or not. Now, was it indoctrination which came with, basic civil liberties and rights, and your freedoms would be protected, and you would live longer, and you'd have free health care, and you could move where you want, say where you want, vote for who you want, and believe whatever you want. You had full freedom of expression. Now, is it insidious in that it's guaranteeing that you have all these horrible freedoms? Yes. Are they objectively the good guy? Yes. Would you rather live in the Federation or the Romulan Star Empire? You'd rather live in the Federation, knowing full well that Section 31 exists. You would still pick it because it's better than the alternatives. Section 31 is a dangerous, extreme, fanatical organization, but is perhaps a necessary evil. So what conclusion can we ultimately draw about Section 31? It is, in basic, yes, it does violate what Gene Roddenberry set out to create. And if you are a Star Trek purist, which they do exist, and I'm not saying you're wrong, because again, you're entitled to what you believe to be good entertainment, Section 31 shouldn't exist. Because in a united humanity, in a united federation where all good things happen, something like Section 31 shouldn't be allowed to exist. It shouldn't be necessary. But Paradise needs protecting. So then there's the other side of the spectrum where it's like they're a necessary evil. You don't have to like them. You don't have to agree with their tactics. And maybe you should continually fight to bring them to heel and stop them. I mean, the genocide of the changelings is not a wise decision. Yes, it ultimately did lead to the end of the war, but look what it almost did as well. It almost led to the destruction of the Federation a few decades later. Actions do have consequences, and Section 31 did nothing to prevent the revenge of the genetically modified changelings teaming up with the Borg. There was a cube on Jupiter, for God's sakes. They didn't even notice. So, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. They are a necessary evil, but they do fumble. And perhaps they should be brought a little bit more under control. But then, when we saw them in the 23rd century and they were a little bit more under control, pun intended, it also nearly led to the destruction of the Federation. So is there an argument to be made that perhaps the organization should be dismantled? Yes. Is there a better argument to say it should be perhaps reframed or restructured? Also yes. So what are we going to see in the new show? Hopefully we see, quite frankly, I personally, I don't want them to restructure it. I actually want them to go balls to the wall and go, we are Section 31. This ain't your Starfleet. This ain't your grandpappy Star Trek. This is bloody Section 31. And we take no prisoners. The one probable large benefit that Section 31 has, narratively speaking, is it allows us to explore that darker side. The fact that people are even having this conversation says that the writers were right to create Section 31. Because it didn't make people stop watching. They just, I don't like that, or I disagree with that. But why do you disagree with it? You disagree with it because they're morally reprehensible. You disagree with it because they are actively working against the thing that they're supposed to be protecting. You dislike them because they're dangerous. You dislike them because they can't be trusted. You dislike them because they represent something awful. But they do generate that story and they make you think. So next time when you're watching something on the television, a news report about some horrible war in a part of the world that perhaps you don't live, and you pick a side, Section 31 is your mirror for that. You have just picked a side in a war. And there are no sides in war. There is only bad. There's no good that comes from it. There is defending yourself, yes, but the people attacking are equally human. Why are they attacking? Why is the war? There is no right or wrong answer. It's all shades of grey. So Section 31 is there to teach you that. To teach you that, yes, the CIA, allegedly, would intervene in some hypothetical war in the Middle East or Eastern Europe, for example, or perhaps in some African state, for reasons that best serve their state, but do not serve the greater good of humanity. Allegedly. So, and you sit there and you think, well, that's fine, it doesn't affect me. But it does, doesn't it? Because Section 31, doing that, interfering in the internal politics of the Pakleds, or the Ferengi, or stopping a war, starting a war, all is being allowed because you are allowing it to happen. And there are people, men, women, children, suffering and dying as a consequence. Section 31 is that mirror. They are held up as that. And to me, that means they are a necessary part of the story because they create that conversation. Is it right? Is it wrong? Should we intervene? Should we help? Or do we just do what will be in our best interest? Section 31 isn't Starfleet. Starfleet sees a war between, I don't know, the Pakleds and the Ferengi then. And they don't go in and go, well, the Ferengi are kind of our allies and the Pakleds are idiots and pirates. Maybe we can trade with the Pakleds a little bit, but they've never demonstrated themselves to be trustworthy. They don't build vessels of exploration. Hell, they don't even build freighters. They build pirate ships. They go out and they attack our vessels. They attack our vulnerable. They attack our colonies. Yes, maybe the Ferengi do as well, but the Ferengi, we can pay them off. Or we can work with them. They're smarter. Is that objectively correct? So Starfleet will go in, and it won't look at it like that. They'll try and create a peace. Section 31 If it'll intervene at all, it'll be like, well, the Ferengi are annoying, but they're controllable. The Pakleds are so stupid, they're not controllable. We're going to make sure the Ferengi win. That's if they get involved at all. They're not there to save lives. Starfleet would look at it and we want to end this war because we don't want any more Pakleds and Ferengi to die. We don't want it to spill over, become our problem, or the Romulans' problem, or the problem of the Kelpians, or the problems of the Kitarians, or whoever else you would like to mention. They just want peace. Section 31 want peace by any means. So is it right to kill 1 billion to save 1 trillion? Yes. Perhaps. Allegedly. But who has the right to make that decision? And what are the consequences of making it? Again, Section 31 is your mirror to look at that. And for me, that means they are an absolutely essential part of Star Trek. But that is my opinion. You, again, are free to disagree with me and tell me in the comment section down below. Because they do effectively represent something that Star Trek wasn't when Gene Roddenberry was alive. And that is darkness. That is fear. That is terror. That is destruction. That is the face of humanity that we are now, not what we want to be. But it acknowledges that human nature is always going to be human nature. Either way, we're at the end of the video. It is meant to be a discussion piece. I don't want to tell you what you should think. But with the new Long Trek coming up, Section 31 also is featured very heavily in Lower Decks recently. And of course, it's featured in several of the movies, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, over the years. And it's always going to be there. It's going to be a talking point. And it's always going to be a controversy. And that's a good thing. So fight it out in the comments. Tell me, what do you think? Is it right? Is it wrong? Should it be controlled? Is it a shade of grey? Is Bashir right? It should be destroyed? Or is Odo correct? And it's a necessary evil. It makes sense. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you made it all to the end of the video, I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And bye-bye.